Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, in both videos today, we're going to start off with the long-range discussion, and much of that's going to center on one of our two maiden predictors for long-range weather, and that's going to be ocean temperatures. You know, during this late summer and now getting close to early fall time period, we're going to keep an eye on the development of this La Nina here. And as of late, we've seen our Southern Oscillation Index go back up, indicating stronger trade winds, and therefore we do expect over the coming weeks and months for these ocean temperatures to cool back off again. It seems as though in all the long-range forecasts, it's the development of this La Nina and the maintenance of the warm water here in the North Pacific that seems to be driving all of these long-range forecasts. Not much else that I can kind of decipher there. So what we typically experience if there's a La Nina winter is higher pressure here. We tend to get a more northerly jet stream that's quite variable but comes through the Gulf of Alaska, cuts into the northwest, and runs out a storm track through the Ohio River Valley. There's quite a bit of cold air that often comes through the Canadian prairies when there's a La Nina, while we tend to be warmer and drier across the southern tier of the U.S. This upcoming forecast I'm about to share with you is kind of what we historically expect from a La Nina kind of to the T here. And we see that through this fall, the cooler water is forecast to emerge here. We also see the negative phase of the Indian Ocean dipole, meaning that the MJO might spend a lot of time in phases 4, 5, and 6 this upcoming winter time period, which is critical. That gives a lot of subsidence in the Central Pacific Ocean, which could impact South America. I have a separate video coming on South America as well. So let's take a look at it. This is what the December, January, February timeframe looks like for that flow pattern. And what do you see? You tend to see something like that. And that's very, very typical La Nina. I mean, that's almost La Nina. I would put this in a textbook as a typical La Nina flow. And the models aren't calling for a strong one. The latest update from the European model, again, this just came out yesterday evening, keeps us at about a half degree below average. And possibly by the end of winter, we're starting to see the building of either INSO neutral or maybe even a weak El Nino for next year. We'll talk more about that in the coming weeks and months. But putting it all together, December, January, February, we tend to favor warmer than normal conditions to the south, back into the southwest, cooler in the northern tier of the United States, extending into the northeast. And the precipitation patterns exactly as we just described. The seasonal update here, December, January, February, tends to be wetter in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies, drier through California, drier in the south and south central plains, dry along the coast. Active Ohio River Valley storm track. That's almost La Nina, textbook case La Nina here. So I wanted to show you what the latest monthly forecasts were for this winter, and now we're going to step back and take a look at what we're expecting over the next 6 weeks or so. I think much of what I'm concerned about over the next 6 weeks, so let's just go from September 15th to October 15th, is to see if, in fact, higher pressure develops here. The models have been hinting at it. And if that occurs, remember the flow around a high is clockwise, and if that sets up, we could draw in quite a bit of moisture into the midsection of the country, extending toward the Great Lakes states, which could inhibit progress for harvest. Now, I'm not calling for a 2018 repeat here. Remember that? That was extremely wet from Texas all the way to Michigan. But we need to be on the lookout for the development of this. Should it fail to develop, the model's way too wet in the interior of the United States for the forecast. But in the Pacific Northwest, this has been a pretty robust signal throughout the month, that 30-day time period of September 15 to October 15. And the arrival of some early rainfall to help with pasture, with winter wheat, with all the different crops that we need to get some moisture on before we go into the winter time period, this could be a very, very beneficial forecast. Now, since I just brought up wheat, I would like to show you that over the last 7 days, when looking back at percent of normal precipitation, look at what came through Kansas. Heavy rains in through here. We were drier to the south. Of course, this was the path that Ida took and all the flooding we saw there. But through the Carolinas and this part of Georgia, this part of the Great Lakes getting into the northeast, very dry. But we're going to change that all up with some big storms coming through this area very soon. But I wanted to point out how wet things have been and how they continue to be wet here in the central and northern plains as we progress forward into this forecast. Now in this forecast, I was watching here some satellite imagery, and there's a few important things I want to be looking at here. Got the tail end of a front here, producing some big storms with some heavy rain down across parts of the south. But it was the winds carrying these clouds. Watch right in through here with me, ready? You're going to see those are really screaming along there. And that's going to be providing some of the kinematic energy, if you will, that's going to kick up this low that's going to go right here over Michigan tomorrow. You can see it blowing the smoke in through here. So where's everything in position right now? Well, we've got Larry, and thankfully Larry is going to stay out to open ocean. we have this tropical disturbance here that could move over parts of Florida. We have the very strong winds coming through Montana, out of Utah, into Wyoming, wrapping up into this low, which is going to eventually tomorrow make it over to Michigan. Actually, it's going to go north of Michigan, but that's where the front's going to cut through. We've got 1, 2, 3 lows stacked up here, not stacked, but lined up in the North Pacific. And they are going to tell me that if these keep moving in this direction, there's no upstream blocking to be concerned about. Now, Larry, like I said, will likely take a track something like this, staying just a bit to the east of Bermuda. It will be a major hurricane as it does so, though, but stays mostly out to open ocean. And the National Hurricane Center is giving this a 30% chance of development. And we're not right now expecting too much other than some locally stronger winds. I'll show you those in a moment. And also, we could get some heavier rain out of this. Now, the winds back in the plains have issued a large area of red flag warnings, and we're going to see some heat really building along the west coast here in a few moments. But let's take a look at those winds. If I just show you through the next 5 days or so, the total accumulated wind gusts, you can see we're going to have gusts here 30, 40, 50 miles an hour coming through this area, and some stronger winds in through the Great Lakes states as that low comes barreling through. And here we go with Larry, and there are the winds with that tropical disturbance we're going to keep a close eye on. It does not appear at this point that it's going to be that strong, of course, but we could expect some heavy rain here as well. Now from there, let's go take a look at our upper level winds, because as I move out here toward the middle of this week, we start to see this larger ridge develop, and it tries to hang on for a while. And if the flow does something like this, well, this will be the cool weather that'll come in temporarily. But if this ridge expands, which we see it doing here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the warmth is going to open up across a broad section of the country. But I just continue to see this jet stream pattern staying on the U.S.-Canada border, even in the Canadian prairie, which is why when we look over the next week, well, system number 1 goes through here. That's going to increase the severe storm threat. And then with that ridge developing, so much of this area is going to be drier than normal. Now, we're going to get some storms in through here, but drier than normal overall. And the storm track still targets British Columbia coming in from the northwest at least through the middle of this month. Now, tomorrow, on Tuesday, many of you might be watching it on Tuesday, there's a risk of severe storms in through this area. And I want to show you that using our high-res NAM model. Now, what we've got here is we play through Monday night into Tuesday morning. There's that low we've been discussing. And you can see that by Tuesday morning, getting into the middle of the day and toward the evening, the tail end of this front is going to be bringing right in through here the chances for storms. And some of these could be severe. Strong straight line winds. Also, there's the risk of some small hail. And should the line break up, we could get some brief spin-ups, like tornadic spin-ups. But as we play it forward, by the time we get into Wednesday, that moves into the northeast, increasing storm threat here, pushes up against the Appalachian Mountains, and we're going to get a cool down behind it. We'll also see the pulse of moisture coming from that tropical system that's going to be heading over Florida. Now, from there, let's just go look at the next 7 days of total accumulated precip. And overall, you see that from the European model, you've got the first system here. We have a second system coming over the top of it. And with the pulse of moisture coming here and scattered storms, well, other than the fact that a lot of this tends to gather here in the northeast, much of the rest of the country is looking drier. And the GFS says the same thing. There's actually really good model agreement here between the European and the GFS out of the next 7 days. So there's a broad sector of the U.S. that outside of that chance of storms coming through here is not going to be seeing much in the way of precipitation through the next week. From there, let's go out and see what week 2 brings, because the jet stream by day 10 is just screaming through here. Lower heights to the north, higher heights to the south, and the flow just has to go between them. And I expect some strong winds. And that jet stream pattern is going to back up into a trough that sits over the Gulf of Alaska by the time I get out there about September 18th, 19th, and 20th. So that week 2 pattern, it's going to favor above normal precip here and down here in Texas, which we're going to talk about later this week. But outside of that, not real strong precipitation signals. And the GFS says something similar. Okay, you see it there. And we'll talk about this very soon once we get a little bit more information about what's happening down here in Texas. So we look out at the next 2 weeks, and generally speaking, there is a section of the country that's going to be seeing some drier conditions overall. Now, what about those temperatures as we wrap this up? Well, we've already experienced these highs today. Let's get into Tuesday. That's where that frontal boundary will be, all right? And it's going to sweep through the Great Lakes Tuesday into Wednesday, and that's going to really let the heat rebuild as that ridge takes shape here over the west. Texas, you stay hot most of this entire week. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the ridge expands, and now we've got a lot of above normal temperatures stretching from the midsection of the country. And by the weekend, this is where we end up. Now, as I look out there, day 5 through 10, this is just looking day 5 through 10 all together here, average temperature anomalies. And even out day 10 through 15, we do see that the pattern is resisting bringing in, unseasonable, cold shots of air. What I mean by that is where we do run the risk of frost. I do not see the risk of an early frost through mid-September for places that don't typically, or that can get them, but as we move forward here, we're going to be watching out for that as we get toward the end of September and October. All right, I'll wrap it up there. Hope you all have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.